Welcome to the Popish Plot. I'm Nate.
I'm Jessica.
And I'm Mike.
We're back once again with another installment of our report on G.K. Chesterton's The Defendant, or as Mike and I like to call it, our defense of the defendant.
Today, we are defending detective stories.
Now I know what you're thinking. Wait a minute. Didn't he already go and defend cheap novels?
We did, at the very beginning, defend Penny Dreadfuls, yes. But detective stories are of a completely different ilk.
Yes, although I do have to say, I think he has a biased opinion on this, given how he is also known for writing detective story fiction.
I would be highly suspect of any detective story writer who would not mount a defense of detective stories.
Well, and in fairness, he does a pretty good job of defending them.
How so?
Well, I believe, basically, the whole point, it's much like what we've talked about before, in that by taking these things that seem too simplistic to be of any real good, you are then going and eschewing the beauty of their natural simplicity, kind of a thing. But he also does make some very interesting points regarding the detective novel as a symbol for our world. As he put it towards the end of the essay, by dealing with the unsleeping sentinels who guard the outposts of society, it tends to remind us that we live in an armed camp, making war with a chaotic world, and that the criminals, the children of chaos, are nothing but the traitors within the gates.
Amen.
I like where he pointed out that the value of detective stories lies in that it's the only form of popular literature which expresses the poetry of the modern life, and then goes in about the beauty of nature is one thing, but the beauty of a civilization is different because it's planned beauty.
But there is no stone in the street and no brick in the wall that is not actually a deliberate symbol, a message from some man, as much as if it were a telegram or a postcard.
Yes.
For the younger members of our audience, those are archaic forms of communication.
Yes.
Yes, and of course, he doesn't directly note how it goes with a detective story, but anyone who has read a detective story knows that it's the slightest detail that tells the person what actually happened.
Yes, it's that detail that could easily go overlooked by somebody who was not carefully looking for it.
While it is the constant tendency of the old Adam to rebel against so universal and automatic a thing as civilization, to preach departure and rebellion, the romance of police activity keeps, in some sense, before the mind the fact that civilization itself is the most sensational of departures and the most romantic of rebellions. And of course, by civilization here, he means a Christian moral civilization. Not just the existence of cities, but cities that are going towards an order.
Yes.
Which, of course, is the entire Christian project. Because man lives, as a result of sin, in chaos and disorder. And detective stories are one of the few places in a modern context, without all the trappings of high fantasy or low fantasy or, other various magical realism.
Yeah.
One of the few places where we have these sentinels of order trying to impose order on a chaotic world to the betterment of all.
Yeah.
Yes, and detective stories is also one of those genres in which if you told the story and the bad guy didn't get their comeuppance at the end and we didn't find out what happened, everyone would be upset. If you write a detective story and it's, at the end you don't know who did it, you're like, that was a horrible story.
Well, you basically just no, you didn't finish.
Exactly.
No, that's the end of the book. No. That's, yeah.
And I've actually heard somebody else, apart from this, comment that essentially there's a set within where they can operate. That you can get all sorts of various stories that just sort of trail off, and the story ends, but the story really just kind of goes on. We're just not looking at it anymore.
The serious literature of just people's lives just sort of trails off.
But with a detective novel or with a horror film or generally a romance, you have to have this finite point where the story reaches a conclusion.
Tension, resolution.
Exactly.
As an exhortation to all of my fellow Christians, the romance of the police force is thus the whole romance of man. It is based on the fact that morality is the most dark and daring of conspiracies. Because we live in a world that is dedicated to chaos. And as people reject God's law, it becomes more chaotic, more unhappy. And those of us who, through prayer, fasting, and good works, try to impose some order on it, are really on a dark and daring conspiracy.
Yes. And I think that's a note where we could wrap this one up.
I just wish I'd actually read more C.S. Lewis so that I knew his quotation about all of us being like spies and saboteurs behind enemy lines.
That's fair.
Because the two seem to dovetail very nicely.
But we are spies and saboteurs and conspirators here at the Popish Plot.
Won't you join us?
Absolutely.
So, comment below on what you think the value of detective stories is. What is the lack of value of detective stories? Is there poetry and art in a city? Does it reveal more about man than the chaos of nature?
Go down below with your comments. While you're down there, make sure you hit the subscribe button, the bell right next to it, the little thumbs up, likey button. Not so much for us to feel like we're doing a good job, but just because that helps us be more visible to other people that might be looking for material like ours. And until next time, remember to live your faith.
Love your faith.
Share that love.
In attempting to reach the genuine psychological reason for the popularity of detective stories, it is necessary to rid ourselves of many mere phrases.